What you guys are making is a slab lantern. This was brought to me, or my attention, from a student last year. You can put a candle in it and it projects light out of the little holes that you carve. Okay, so there's the lid. You'd place the candle down here. The higher you end up cutting your lid, the harder it is to get a candle inside. So just kind of be thinking about form and function. And also you're going to have a theme. Some of you may be confused on a theme. It's something that you stand for. I want you to express yourself through your ceramic arts at this point. Because we've had some where you've absolutely had to express yourself through it, and some of them that are just pretty straightforward, like a slab mug. And this is combining what we've learned about the slab mug with what we've done with the slab box. Okay? So my theme on this one was the inner child. I believe everybody kind of hides their inner child over time, and I think it's really important to let that out, whether that's silly things like popping bubble wrap or just having a good time. I think some people just take life a little too seriously. So you'll see on the outside there's chains, and I've carved those in with a relief carving, and what I used was a dog tag. So I want you guys to be really clever with your shapes. Some people ask me, how do I make a perfect circle? There's circles everywhere. Pull out a quarter, trace it, do a relief carving around it. This one I did relief carving of chains, so you are going to have a texture or a design on the outside. It needs to be something that's kind of carved in some way, shape, or form. And I'll give you quick ways to do it and also kind of explain that more thoroughly as we go on. But yeah, there's chains on the outside, and then these little circles represent bubbles. Because as a kid I loved bubbles. I think I primarily like popping other people's bubbles that they blew, but it was something I really enjoyed as a kid. And I also have always been fascinated by refraction, the way light shines through things and changes colors. So that's my lantern, and the handle broke off. In regards to the handle, no plain balls or lunch pail handles where it's just a coil arched across the top. Be creative. Sculpt me something. Like last year I had a student do a beach theme. She did a dolphin across the top as her handle. I had a student do a mountain theme, and he loved the mountains, and his reasoning behind it was because it was a place for him to escape. And so he did like silhouettes of pine trees, and then the top was like a small moose. It was a really good little moose. It was really cute. So that's a slab lantern. So you'll be doing not only a texture or design on the outside, but also projection holes. So be thinking about that while I demonstrate. And this is just building again on all the skills we've learned throughout the year. So first I'm going to get my cylinder made, and I'm just going to cut a nice straight line. And I want to leave some clay for myself to cut the bottom. So I'm going to measure over about 6 inches because that's the minimum height. A lot of my students also in the past have liked to make little wax burners, and that's fine as long as it makes the height requirements. I don't care what it is that you make, as long as it doesn't, as long as it reflects something positive. And it meets the requirements in the comps notebook. So each one I measured to about 6 inches, and then I'm going to go straight all the way down. Let me make sure that my measurements. Measure twice, cut once. Cut a nice straight line. So I measured 6 inches all the way down. And try to leave yourself enough. I don't know that I left myself enough for the bottom and top, but I'll get something going. So I'll save that to the side. I'm going to wrap the cylinder with a paper towel. And I always line up one side exact so I don't have to tuck in both sides. It's a little too much paper towel. And I'll tuck in the other side. Pass that to Josh, please. Okay, so I'll tuck in one side, and I always make sure that this side that I've tucked in is the top because it's easier to get out. I'm just going to ravel this up again. I'm using recycled clay that's got a bunch of little divots in it, but that's okay. Save that, hopefully for the bottom. Okay, so mine was a little bit short, okay? I kind of did it on purpose. But if it's ever short, you can just kind of stretch it across. But what I want you to do is overlap a little bit, and then you cut a straight line so that they line up perfectly, even if your lines aren't perfectly straight. So on this one, I'll score and slip these two together. But if you end up shallow, like this one is, where it's just not quite far enough, you're going to end up stretching the clay over the cylinder. Slip, score and slip. So the difference between this one and the slab mug is that you'll end up making a lid and, get my paper towel out of the way there, a lid and a bottom. So you'll see I'm just stretching the clay over. My paper towel's getting in the way a little bit. Till it reaches. And then just press the clay together where you've scored and slipped it. Then I'm going to take the smooth rib and blend a little bit. As I was smoothing, I pulled that part apart. And you really want to do a good job of cleaning up the outside before you start doing your carvings. And think about what kind of carvings you're going to do. If you're going to do like a texture, maybe you want to do it with the cylinder in. If you're going to do a relief carving, you're going to have to do it without the cylinder in because you're going to want to let it dry a bit. So I'm just cleaning up some of these little wounds from the slab. And fingerprints from me carrying it over here. Now I'm going to make the bottom. Just by tracing around the outside. And again, make sure that your needle tool is upright. If you carve underneath it, your bottom is going to fit kind of awkwardly, or not at all, in which case you'd have to roll out another slab. So there's one, that's the bottom. Let me carry it with me. Now I'm going to do number 2. I can trace the first shape if I want. But I'm going to trace around the cylinder just to make sure, because the other one has a little chunk cut off, which I'll accommodate later. So again, just cutting around, tracing the cylinder. And I'll save these for my handle and other pieces later. So this is going to be my top. If I want to emboss it like earlier where I make it pop up, like we did on the slab box, I'd let it dry a little bit. On that note, last time we had these big boxes that had a lot of surface area. So if you wanted it to dry for embossing purposes, you had to wait a little while because it's so big. This one's a little bit smaller. It'll start to emboss almost right away. I'd give it maybe 5 or 6 minutes, but that's about it. So again, just a tip. It doesn't have to be done, but the paper towel, the way it was shoved in, I like that on top, so it's easier to get the cylinder out. If I do it on this side, it's a little bit more of a challenge to get out. So I'm going to score and slip my bottom on. Score and slip. Good eye, AJ. It was supposed to be. I can make either side really, but I didn't follow my own tip. So yeah, you are right. Okay, so now I'm just going to try to line up all the edges as closely as I can. And then I press with my finger to make sure that they're aligned. It also kind of starts the blending process. And just smooth a little bit. Then I'm going to take the smooth rib and start blending. And I'm going to blend whatever side hangs over more. If the top hangs over more, I'm going to blend down. If the bottom hangs out more, I'm going to blend up. So down here I'll go down. I'll go up. Because it also brings some clay down and just do a nice job of blending for myself. Okay. Then if I wanted to, say I wanted to do a texture, something, a pressing. Say I talked about a forest theme earlier, and I would have a lot of blending to do down here with my fingers, just as a side note. But say you wanted to do a leaf pressing and then carve around the outside. This would be the time to do it with the cylinder still in, so you have something to press against and not just smash the walls in. I'll use this as a quick texture. If it fits your theme, feel free to use these, but don't just use them just because it's easy. But when you do a pressing, you get one shot at it. You can't look at it afterwards and go, oh, I should have pressed a little harder, because then you can't really place it in the same exact spot. So right now I'm just going to press and roll a little bit. Just make sure I keep it in the same spot. Okay, and then just make sure that I've pressed everywhere. So like I said, if you take this off and you just see that it's not pressed in deep enough, it's really hard to get it lined up. Almost impossible because of human error. So I'm going to press, and the reason I do the pressings with the cylinder is because I'm really pressing pretty hard right now, and the cylinder gives some support on the inside. So if you're going to do a leaf pressing, if you're going to do a relief carving, you can do it at any point in time, probably after it's dried a bit and gotten to leather hard. So I'll kind of leave some spots a little bit shallow so you can see that sometimes it doesn't press as well. Okay. So you'll see some of the pressings on the texture. Some of them are really good, and then over here it's a little bit more shallow. So sometimes you look at it and you're like, oh, I wish I would have pressed harder. It's nearly impossible to get back in there. And I've got a little area here to fill in. I could use the texture again. Trying to think theme-wise. Maybe a brick wall, something that's always been pushed against you or held you up or something like that. Who knows what your theme could be. You could do something if you're more a jovial person, maybe little flowers. Use the tools you have. Look around the room, look in your pockets. Like I said, sometimes you just use quarters and things like that that are readily available to you. Just using the ribbon tool to do either a star or a flower. I'm not sure how this is going to come out. It's more like a flower, I guess. And this is just on a whim. I usually sit and stare at a project for a while and decide what it is that I want to do. Put some conscious effort into it. So a little flower just to fill space and probably do something else here. Then score and slip the lid on after you take the cylinder out, obviously. So I'm going to get rid of my paper towel. And there sometimes seems to be confusion. Students do one or the other. They do the texture and the design on the outside and forget about the carvings of the projection holes. And sometimes they do the projection holes and they forget the carving on the outside. So make sure that there's some sort of design, texture, or relief carving, whatever it is you want to do. So now I'm going to score and slip the lid on since I get rid of that hair. And be sure to do a clean job of scoring, because once you have this stuck on there, it's kind of hard to clean the inside until you've cut your lid. Alright, score and slip. Josh, will you hand me the X-Acto blade from the pot there? Thank you. Okay. Stick my lid on. I actually want it embossed. I like when they're popped up a little bit, just a little bit more style, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I get a lot of students who want to do little wax burners on these. So if you want to carve out a little hole to put a tea candle in, as long as it's 6 inches tall, which is kind of far for a tea candle to burn. Bless you. So I have a little bit of overhang because I put it on the wrong way. There we go. There we go. I've got a little bit hanging over the side here, so I'm just going to carve that off because it's a little more than I want to blend. Keep in mind too, I already pressed my texture on here. I may want to put my lid on there, but again, if you have to have the cylinder inside, you don't have that freedom. So when you blend, you may blur out some of your textures. So just be thinking of form and function. Do I want to blend it now or later? Okay. Then I would blend that with my smooth rib. Then it's time to make a handle. You can put the handle anywhere you'd like if you don't want it on top. It doesn't have to be, but a typical lantern, usually the handle's on top. This one here had a little swirl on top, like a little handle, but it broke off. So I'll give you a couple of non-examples. Things that are just lacking in creativity and effort. I get a lot of these. Okay, the classic ball handle or the lunch pail handle. Like that. I don't want to see that. I want to see something creative and represents what it is that you're showing that you stand for. So even if it can be simple, like say I roll this coil out. As long as it matches your theme. So say it's, I don't know, style and elegance. We'll see if this handle comes out elegant or stylish, but I like real wavy lines. Kind of draws the eye in a bit. It's starting to crack a little bit. I would add some water to it and just kind of smooth it out with my finger. Okay, so I could do a little handle like that on top. Okay, I'd like a little bit more complexity than that. Some other strategies. Last year I had a student show me how to do a bamboo handle, which I thought was pretty cool. So I'll show you real quick how to do that. So he rolled a coil, and his coils were always kind of off. They weren't very symmetric. So you can see it's a little thinner here and here, and thicker in the middle. Then you'd carve off each end. And then I'd roll my needle tool right in the middle. Little piece of bamboo on there somehow. I'd maybe prop it up on two other pieces or something like that. So at this point I would want to do my projection carvings. It's a little bit too wet right now and it's going to be mushy left with all these little pieces. Plus I want to make sure that the cylinder itself is as strong as possible. That's the one thing that's a little bit more challenging in this one than the last couple of projects, is just that it's tall. So if you carve too big of pieces out, or you're taking away too much clay, it may collapse on you. You may get this far, start carving a little too early or carving too big, and it may collapse. Okay, so be really careful. Don't be fearful. Just if it starts to collapse a little bit, give it something to support it, and wait till it dries a little bit more. So you probably have your handle on, or at least have the handle made and sitting to the side. Let it dry a bit. Maybe you're going to do relief carvings for whatever your theme is. And then lastly, and I highly recommend you do the cutting the lid last, and it's simply because of the fact that you can go around some of your designs. Some people will do, like even in the example here, the little bubbles, these little holes. There's a spot on here somewhere, right here. I cut through one of the holes. I should have gone around it, and that's why it's stuck, because one, there was a little bit of glaze in there. Two, it was a weak point, so when I tried to pop it off, it broke. So just keep those things in mind.